So today I'm talk one of the piece of research entitled Demand Information Acquisition Strategy in a Dual Channel Supply Chain. So I will first give a very brief introduction, introduce the background of research and give the motivation of the research and what's the research question we will address in this study. And then I will give a very brief literature review that most related to our study. And then I will jump to look at the research framework and introduce the model. And then I will focus on the result and insights and the implication. And I will close my talk with conclusion, brief conclusion. So accurate demand information play a very important role in our decision, especially in the marketing decision, operation decision, because it helps to make a very efficient decision. We know that when the information on demand is late, we can see that it could lead to profit loss or supply chain inefficiency. So we can see that sometimes we have both effect. So demand information, especially accurate demand information, is very important to some industry with volatile demand. For example, company sells fashion products, seasonal products, or they launch new products, and some products could be have let's say short life cycle. So demand information is very important, as we mentioned that now with new technology, for example, in development in the internet technology and other technology, for example, blockchain. So we can see that a company can get custom level data, and especially in the era of big data, custom level data is available, right? And also many marketing research company, they can provide demand focusing information. For example, nothing company that is a famous consulting company. They collect the customer data and do the focusing to the demand and provide information to some company. They sell like consumer products, vehicle and equipment. And another example could be NPD company. This is a company, they collect the data related to marketing, related to the data, and do the business analytics surveys to many manufacturer and retailer. So information acquisition and share has been a hot topic in the literature. So from the single channel, different research do a lot of information. For example, they look at customer perceptions on the product space. They look at product quality, and they look at the demand. So that's give us a question to capture some of the practice. We look at the information acquisition strategy in the manufacturer direct channel. So why we look at the information acquisition strategy in a dual channel? So there are a couple of other reasons. One is the reason is that now a lot of manufacturers sell the products in the multiple channel, through the retailer channel, through the direct channel. And when manufacturers sell the both channel, dual channel, you can see that manufacturer, the direct channel and the retailer channel actually compete directly. And also manufacturer is supply of the retailer. They have some relationship like collaborator. So in such a supply chain structure, we can see that the manufacturer and retailer actually is a competition relationship. And the second reason is that when manufacturer has a demand information, manufacturer probably have some incentive to distort information through setting the wholesale price. So when the retailer set order quantity, And also on the other side, the retailer also have the incentive if they retailer acquire the demand information and own the private demand information, and the retailer may have some incentive to distort the information through set order quantity decision. And the third one is that in the dual channel structure, so this is known as to look at information strategy. So that's where endogenous information strategy decision in the dual channel structure. So, and dual channel structure, we answered the following question. In this study, we address the following question. So first question we address is, when should the manufacturer or the retailer acquire market size information? The second question is, what are the equilibrium information acquisition strategy for the supply chain members? And the third one is, what's the impact of information acquisition on the retailer, on the supply chain, and on the custom and the social welfare? So let me give a very brief literature review. So from the introduction, you can see that our study actually relate to three streams of study. One is manufacture, or sometimes we call the supply encroachment. And the second stream is the signal game in the supply encroachment setting. And the third one is information acquisition. For the manufacturer encroachment, this is wide or extensive study in the literature. So for example, Aya et al. In 2007, so without consider symmetrical information, Aya actually built up a cornered model and look at when manufacturer should encroach on the consumer market. He found that encroachment is always better for the manufacturer. And one surprise result from Aya's work is that he found that the bright side of encroachment, when the selling cost of manufacturer direct channel is in the moderate high, actually encroachment benefits the retailer. So Chen et al. 2012 and Chen 2003 actually developed a pricing model to look at the manufacturing encroachment solution here. So Chen et al. In 2018 use aggregate demand, look at by assume that a portion of customer prefer the retailer channel, another portion of the customer prefer direct channel. He found they identified condition when the manufacturer will encroach, but they more focus on look at coordination contract, for example, profit sharing contract that can coordinate the supply chain. Chen et al. In 2003 used a vertical differentiation model from the customer perspective. So customer perceive that direct channel and retailer channel differently. So they look at the low value of the direct channel because the argument here is the customer probably cannot feel and touch the product before buy the products. And the pricing model setting here, Chen et al. Find a very interesting result is that when manufacturer encroach, actually manufacturer will not sell any products in the direct channel. Instead, manufacturer use direct channel as a threat to the retailer, so retailer can raise the order quantity. So in that case, in that situation, actually mitigate the double marginalization effect. So he found that under certain condition, actually encroachment benefited both the manufacturer and the retailer. Research stream signaling game in the supply encroachment. So Li et al. 2014 assumed that retailer has the private information. They also focus on look at what's the asymmetric information, demand information will affect the manufacturer encroachment decision. Gao et al. In 2021 look at information, the impact of information on the supply encroachment. So he assumed he used IS, they use the IS model and assume that direct channel has the disadvantage in the selling cost. And this selling cost is the private information for the manufacturer. They investigate how this private information can signal the retailer when they order the product and how this can affect the supply's encroachment. So our study also related to information acquisition. So in this stream of research, they look at how the retailer manufacturer can acquire the information. For example, they can build up their system, collect the data, and do the forecasting. And also they look at other sources to get the information. For example, look at online review and also look at either the manufacturer and the retailer acquire information from the third party company. So third party company provide information on that. So they found that actually acquire information either by the manufacturer and the retailer could benefit the information acquisition. Along this research in the literature, so in our study, we look at framework, look at dual channel framework. So we look at neither the manufacturer and the retailer will build up the system to get collect the information to get demand forecasting. Instead, we assume that they acquire information from the third-party company who conduct marketing research. So because we look at information equilibrium, so information structure equilibrium. So again, so we are looking at who are the first mover to acquire information is, and also we are follow the research in the literature that usually a third-party company has the demand information they can provide through a non-disclosed and confidential agreement. That also implies that when one of the firm acquire the information, the other firm cannot acquire the information. So on this background, so we assume that manufacturer is the first mover to acquire the information. If the manufacturer will not acquire information, the retailer will acquire the information. And as we in the study, so we assume we just denote that manufacturer is firm M and retailer is firm R here. And similar to other research, so manufacturer is price leader in the dual channel, set the wholesale price first, and then both the manufacturer and the retailer will set all the quantity. So we will use a coordinate model, follow the Aya et al. 2007. So this is our model setting. So demand model. So we use inverse linear demand. So follow a lot of study in the dual channel research here. So we assume that A is the market size. So market size is a random variable here. We look at 2-point distribution. So that is there is a probability theta that demand size is high, and there is another probability 1 minus theta demand is low. So this information is prior information is common knowledge to both the manufacturer and the retailer. For the selling cost, we also follow the study in the literature. For example, IS work 2007 and Lee et al. 2014, Gao et al. In 2021. So we assume that manufacturer direction has a sales cost disadvantage because retailer has more retailing experience. So we nominate retailers' selling cost to 0. We also nominate the cost of production and acquisition information is 0 to avoid some trivial case, because the core message here will not affect if the cost of production and acquisition cost is non-zero. So for the game sequence here, so as we gave the model framework in the previous slides, so the first stage, company for firm M or manufacturer first decide if he will acquire information from the third-party company. In the second step, if manufacturer will not acquire information, the retailer need to decide if he will acquire information from the third-party firm. And then the third step, manufacturer will decide wholesale price, and then retailer will decide order quantity QR, and then manufacturer will set quantity QM. So here for this game sequence, we can see that there are two possible signal game. Either manufacturer acquire information, so manufacturer can send a signal through decide the wholesale price, announce the wholesale price to the retailer. And if a retailer acquire information, also a retailer can signal the market size through the order quantity QR to the manufacturer when manufacturer set quantity QM. So this is our main model. Absolutely, we have a different game sequence. We did a couple of extension on that. So I will show the major result of our extension a little bit late. So because we look at equilibrium of information acquisition, so that is very nature. We look at 3 subgames, derive equilibrium outcome for 3 subgames. First subgames, leader from acquire information, we called subgame N. And the second subgame is that the manufacturer acquire information, we use M, and then R from R acquired information, we use R to represent this subgame. So first, quickly look at the model of a leader firm acquires information. So because nobody, neither manufacturer and retailer has the information, they decide their decision wholesale price or the quantity based on the expected value. So A0 is expected demand size is given by the probability of a high demand multiply AH plus probability that low demand multiply AL. So in our study, we actually consider a range, look at the C less than CM in this study, because this can allow us to avoid a lot of trivial case. And also this range is mostly interesting rate. It can provide all of the insights here. So for the this range for the case subgame N, so we can see that both channel will have cells. So the second subgame is the manufacturer acquired information. So manufacturer and this subgames, the manufacturer can have a private demand information, and the signal game may arise as we give the background, right? Manufacturer can signal the market size to setting the wholesale price to the retailer. So for the signal game, there are two types of perfect Bayes equilibrium may exist, separating and putting. So let's say if a manufacturer observe that demand is high, we call that a type H or type high manufacturer. If manufacturer observe demand is low, we call the type low manufacturer. So for the separating game means that based on the demand information manufacturer observed, manufacturer set a different wholesale price so that retailer can sense the actually inferred demand size. For the pooling equilibrium, so for the manufacturer only set the same price, so retailer cannot infer the demand size information from the manufacturer decision. So for the signal game, we know that a lot of criteria to look at equilibrium. So in the literature, most of the research look at intuitive criteria. Actually, is proposed by Chu and Krebs in 1987. So in this study, we also use this intuitive criteria. We found that actually putting equilibrium cannot survive the intuitive criteria. So we only look at the separating equilibrium. So manufacturer decide all the quantity of the sales in the direct channel based on its observation I. So I is true information of the demand. So I could be high and low. So firm R anticipates that manufactured all the quantity because firm R don't have information on the demand. So J here, subscript J means that firm R actually believe the market size. So decide quantity here. So R actually have a belief structure for separating equilibrium. So if firm R observe a high wholesale price is greater than threshold, let's use R bar M here. So retailer R, firm R actually believe that demand size is high. If observed wholesale price is lower than a bar, and firm I believe that demand size is low. So then perfect Bayesian separating equilibrium will satisfy the two conditions. One is if manufacturer has the information and that is indicated demand size is high. So manufacturer will set a high wholesale price is gradient is set a low wholesale price. And the second condition is that if a manufacturer observe that demand is low, manufacturer rational set low price on the wholesale price. Gradient, the manufacturer distort the information in set the high wholesale price. So that's the condition for a perfect Bayesian separating equilibrium. So as we mentioned that in the study, we consider the range C is less than C1M. So in this case, for the manufacturer, if a manufacturer acquire information, so both channel will have a sales. So because as we mentioned that when firm M acquire information, actually there is a signaling game. So let me use a numerical example to illustrate that. So horizontal is the wholesale price, vertical axis is manufacturer's profit based on its information I, and retailers believe J here. So from here, we can see that manufacturer, the brown line is manufacturer observe high demand and the retailer believe that demand is high. And the red line is manufacturer observe a high demand and the retailer believe that is a low demand. So we can see that type H manufacturer has no incentive to mimic type L manufacturer. So on the other side, we can see that this two red dashed line is best response wholesale price, right? So we can see that when the demand is low, so we can see that low type manufacturer actually has an incentive to mimic high type of manufacturer by by increase or distort upwards on the wholesale price. So because we can show that only the separating equilibrium exists, so that push the high type of manufacturer to increase the price to this level. So now the low type of manufacturer don't have incentive to increase the price, right? So then low type manufacturer set the wholesale price based on the best reaction, but a high type of manufacturer will distort information by increase the wholesale price. So the third sub game is firm R will acquire information. Now firm R has the private information. Again, a signal game may raise, and also we can prove that putting equilibrium cannot survive the intuitive criteria. So then manufacturer decide sells in the direct channel based on its belief J here. Right, and firm R anticipate Q sales in the direct channel and decide order quantity based on its true information AR here. So we can see again, we can see that the manufacturer's profit is from two sources. One is from wholesaling business, another one is from retail selling from the direct channel. And the manufacturer will set the wholesale price based on the expected value, because now manufacturer don't have private information. So similar to the subgame that firm M acquire information. So here we can see that firm M's belief has a belief structure for separate equilibrium. So if retailer order high quantity that is bigger than threshold, so manufacturer believe that the demand size is high. If retailer order a low order quantity that is lower than a threshold, manufacturer believe that the market size is low. And similar to the subgame that manufacturer acquire information, a perfect base separating equilibrium satisfy two conditions. Is very similar to the subgame even manufacturer acquire information. Again, when firm R acquire information, firm R could we have incentive to distort information? So again, let me use a numerical study to illustrate this result. So again, so horizontal here is retailer order quantity for giving W. And vertical is retailer's profit based on its true information on the demand I, and the manufacturer belief on the market size J here. So from here, you can see that again, dashed red line is the best best response on the order quantity for the retailer. So here you can see that type L retailer has no incentive to mimic type H retailer, right? So, but you can see that type L, type H retailer. So because here you can see that if retailer observe a high demand and the manufacturer believe that is high, so this is a brown line, and this red line is retailer observe the have the information that demand is high, but manufacturer believe that is low. So in this case, you can see that retailer, high type of retailer has incentive to mimic type low retailer by reduce the order quantity, right? So in this range. So as we mentioned that pudding equilibrium cannot survive in the intuitive criteria. So we can see that type L retailer will actually distort the information but reduce the cost quantity, order quantity to QR bar W here, right? And then we can see that high type retailer has no incentive. So we can see that in the sub game R here, so if the retailer observe low demand, so actually the retailer will reduce the order quantity by distort the order quantity. And if retailer observe a high demand, actually set the best response order. For the equilibrium outcome for the subgame R here, there's a different from subgame N and subgame M in the range C less than C1M. So we can see that equilibrium outcome have 3 range. So the first range means that when the selling cost of a manufacturer direct channel is low. So in this range, you can see that because direct channel is very efficient, right? It's more efficient because it has a cost is low. So in this case, the manufacturer will set a wholesale price that order quantity is 0 from retailer if demand is low. But if demand is high, order quantity is greater than 0. In the middle, so this is a range between C1R and C12 here. So here we can see that in this range, because the selling cost in the direct channel is increased, so direct channel is not compatible compared to the retail channel. So in this range, manufacturer will set a wholesale price that retailer will order products no matter demand is high and low. And in this range, retailer has no incentive to distort the information when demand is low. But when the cost is very high in terms of retail manufacturer direct channel selling cost, in this range, so we can prove that retailer L has the incentive to distort the order quantity. So let's look at our major result, look at the equilibrium supply chain information strategy. So for the equilibrium information strategy, if the strategy is N or either firm will acquire information that will satisfy 2 conditions. One is firm R's expected value if it require information is less than if firm R not require information. And the second one is manufacturer expect profit if it require information is less than if it will not require information. If the equilibrium information strategy equilibrium is M, we have 2 conditions here. The first condition is retailer is better off by acquiring information than compared to no information. And also manufacturer actually is better off with acquiring information than if a retailer acquire information. The second condition is that retailer acquire information is expected by profit is less than if it will not require information. And in the same time, manufacturer expect the profit if manufacturer acquire information then without the information. If the supply chain information strategy equilibrium is R, retailer acquire information, we need to certify the condition here is retailer is better off with acquiring information than without information, and the manufacturer expect profit with acquire information by itself is less than the expect profit if retailer acquire information. So now we have the equilibrium information strategy. So it's based on the probability. The demand is high. Demand is high. High demand is high, medium, and low. So the first A figure show that if the probability that high demand is low, and the C means that the probability if high demand is high. So from the equilibrium information strategy, we have the result here is that we can see that either firm can acquire information. So M could be dominant equilibrium, and R could be dominant equilibrium, and the N either will require information, could be dominant information. So for the basic idea here, we can see that usually when the selling cost in the directional is low, manufacturer prefer to acquire information. And when the selling cost of direct channel is moderate, and the probability of a high demand is a little bit high, is relatively high, and the retailer will acquire information. And when the selling cost of manufacturer direct channel is very high, and usually none of the manufacturer and the retailer will acquire information. And when the probability of high demand is high, so when the cost is in the median is here, moderate low, so both manufacturer and retailer may not acquire information. So we have the interpretation here. So because we can see that manufacturer in the range we consider will have the probably have the incentive to distort the information there, right? When the demand is high, manufacturer high type high manufacturer will raise the wholesale price. And for the subscript R here, we have three range. Probably we can easily to interpret based on the three range. So when the selling cost is less than C1R, because we know that C1R is the threshold divided by the subscript R there, right? So when R is very low here, so if a retailer acquire information based on the subscript equilibrium outcome, so we can see that at that condition, the retailer will not have any sales when demand is low. So this is not is a negative impact on the retailer. So retailer will not acquire information. For the manufacturer, we can see that when cost is low, so direct channel sale is very efficiently, right? So manufacturer rely more sales from the direct channel. So we can see that when manufacturer acquire information, so both channel has a sale. So when type edge manufacturer could increase the wholesale price, that it will result that retailer will load all the quantity, but the sales in the direct channel will increase. So for specific, we can see that when Q is, when theta here is very high, means that the probability that the demand is very high. So we can see that manufacturer will use will acquire information where C is small, but as long as the C is increased, because the probability of demand is high, so the benefit will increase. In this case, manufacturer will not acquire information, as we know that in C, when C is less than C around R here, retailer will not interested to acquire information, because if a retailer acquire information, he has to give up the sales when demand is low. So in the other range here, so we can see that when C is low here, right? Manufacturer here will acquire information. So because when theta is very low, we can, in general, we can see that the high probability, we can see that the probability that demand is high is very low, right? So we can see that manufacturer actually will set the wholesale price when demand is low, set the best quantity, right? So you can see that actually from the wholesale price, retailer can infer the quantity, the information of demand. So retailer has no incentive to acquire information. In the second range here, we can say that this red line range, right? So here we can see that in this range, when theta is low here, when theta here is low here, so we can see that again, retailer has no incentive to acquire information, right? Because if demand is probability demand is low, manufacturer will indicate will not distort information. So from the wholesale price, retailer can infer the manufacturer signal there. So we can see that when theta is great or in the medium high, right? So means that probability for demand is high there. So you can see that the manufacturer could distort the information. So in this case, retailer will acquire information. So when the selling cost is very high here, so we can see that no manufacturer and the retailer will acquire information, because if you acquire information, you have signal cost of acquire information there. So both will have no incentive to acquire information. So let me use an example to illustrate the case that when the probability of high demand is high. So that is say this figure here. So because this figure, we can say that the equilibrium information strategy change from M acquire information, none of them acquire information, retailer acquire information, and none of them acquire information here. So you can see that in the first range, when the selling cost in the direct channel is very low here. So from manufacturer's perspective here, so you can see that manufacturer prefer that retailer, the blue line here, manufacturer prefer retailer to acquire information here, right? Because retailer, if a retailer acquire information, that is best for the manufacturer. But from the retailer perspective here, so if manufacturer will not require information, so you can see that the best choice of the retailer is this black dash line, right? That is no information acquired, okay? So in the second range here, still manufacturer prefer that retailer acquire information, but here we can say that retailer here, retailer prefer that no information here, right? So the first one, because retailer prefer that non-information, but non-information here, respect to manufacturer is the worst case. So in this case, manufacturer will acquire information. And the second range here is as we mentioned that manufacturer prefer retailer providing information here. But here we can say that retailer actually prefer not acquire information. And the third range here, we can see that the best choice for manufacturer is a retailer acquire information, and the second choice is none of them to acquire information, and the worst case is manufacturer acquire information. In the same range here, we can see that retailer prefer acquire information here, because acquire information benefited the retailer, and second choice is not acquire information. So here we can see that equilibrium is that retailer acquire information. So in this range, actually retailer in the range that retailer will has the signal gain. So retailer will distort his order quantity if demand information is low there. So in this range, we can see that still manufacturer prefer that retailer acquire information, and absolutely retailer is better off with acquire information. So the equilibrium solution here is retailer acquire information. When the selling cost is very high here, so we can say that manufacturer still prefer that retailer acquire information, but due to that, retailer will distort the order quantity when demand is low. So retailer expected profit is low here. And here we can say that neither of the firm will acquire information is the best choice for the supply chain. So we also look at the impact of the information acquisition here. We found that if a manufacturer acquire information, so we can say that firm R is always worse off, and the supply chain is worse off if the direct channel selling cost is low. Otherwise, it's worse off. If a retailer require the information, so retailer is always better off, and supply chain is better off. The reason is that when manufacturer acquire information, retailer is worse off because because distort the wholesale price that reduce the order quantity, actually amplifies double marginalization. Actually, is not good for the manufacturer. For the supply chain, we say it's low. So we can say even manufacturer can distort the information when demand is high. That could reduce the retailer order quantity, but selling quantity in the directory is high. So actually it's a benefit the manufacturer. So we can say that in this range, the supply chain is better off. But as we mentioned that when the selling cost of the direct channel increase, so direct channel become less efficiently, right? So the benefit manufacturer acquire information will reduce. So when the loss from the impact on the firm R's profit is higher than the gain from the manufacturer due to manufacturer acquire information, so we can say that the supply chain will worse off. For the case if the retailer acquire information, so as we mentioned that equilibrium, we can see that when retailer will acquire information as a condition that when the probability of high demand is sufficiently high, and cost of the direct channel is moderate. So at that time, that range, retailers channel is more competitive compared to the manufacturer direct channel. So we can say that retailer can better off, and if a retailer is better off, and the supply chain is always better off. So I can use a numerical study. So we can say that when C less than CR2 here, so that is the range that the retailer has no incentive to distort all the quantity information. So we can see that when the cost of direct channel is low, so supply chain is better off. Otherwise, supply chain is worse off. For the range that C is greater than CRR and maximal CRM and C32 here. So we can see that retailer has the incentive to distort the information. So we can see that when in this range, when retailer acquire information, actually supply chain is better off. So when the manufacturer acquire information, so only when the cost of direct channel sale is low, so supply chain is better off. Otherwise, it's worse off. So we also look at the impact of information acquisition on the custom surplus and social welfare due to the time limit here. So probably I'll quickly go through the result here. So we can see that when cost of selling in the direct channel is very low, both the customer surplus and social welfare is better off. In the middle here, so social welfare is better off, but customer surplus is low. And when it's very high here, cost is very high, both are worse off. And this is the case that when the retailer has the incentive to distort wholesale order quantity when demand is low. So we can say that when retailer acquire information is always better off in terms of customer surplus and social welfare. Otherwise, if a manufacturer acquire information, so social welfare is low when the cost is low, otherwise is high. So from this is the result, we can say that information acquisition may hurt the customer as well as the society. So we also look at the information share here. We find the result here is that we look at when the manufacturer acquire information, so we can see that the manufacturer prefer to share information with the retailer, and the information share always benefited for the retailer R here. So because if a manufacturer share information, manufacturer will not distort wholesale price, that can encourage retailer order more product, mitigate the double marginalization effect. Actually is better off for both. So for the retailer, only one small range retailer would like to share information. That range is that when the probability of high demand is moderate and the cost is very low. Recall that when the cost is lower than one R here, so if a retailer acquire information, retailer has to give up the sales when demand is low. So that is the reason why the retailer would like to share information. For the other range, retailer will not share the information because retailer don't want to lose the benefit or the advantage by owning the information, by owning the private information in the demand. So if the retailer share the information, is always better off. The manufacturer is always better off. So as we mentioned that we examine some of the extension, so by changing the decision sequence. One of the decision sequence is that when manufacturer and retailer set order quantity simultaneously, so decision made simultaneously, in this case, manufacturer still can play signal game, but retailer will not play a signal game. So in this case, we can see that the majority of the result in the main model still hold. We can see that either manufacturer acquire information or the retailer acquire information or none of them acquire information, still could be the dominant strategy. And also manufacturer will acquire information when the selling cost in the direct channel is quite low, and none of them acquire the information when the manufacturer direct channel cost is a little bit high. So different from the main model, we can see that when the selling cost of direct channel is very high, the manufacturer will not share information, will not acquire information. Instead, retailer acquire information. And the second extension, we look at both form acquire information. So if both the form acquire information here, we can see that both form can share have the information, right? So we have the result when both firm can acquire information. So they will both acquire information. The reason is that when manufacturer acquire information, so retailer has to pay the high wholesale price if demand is high, right? So if a retailer will not acquire information, so that means the retailer acquire information if a manufacturer also acquire information. So if a manufacturer doesn't acquire information, so we can say many retailer can choose either acquire information or not acquire information. So if a retailer acquire information, so you can say that manufacturer will not lose the advantage in the information. In this case, manufacturer also acquire information to take the advantage of information. The third extension, we can say that when the firm R make acquisition, make information acquisition first, this is the first move. So if the second step, if firm R will not acquire information, the manufacturer will acquire information. So we can see that, again, the major result in the main model, so three equilibrium result, manufacturer acquire information, retailer acquire information, and none of them acquire information still can be, one of them can be a dominant strategy. And also when the selling cost of the direct channel is very high, so both of them will not acquire information. So different case, if manufacturer move first, we can see that when the probability of a high demand is high, so retailer is more aggregate, more aggressively acquire information. And when the information, when the probability of high demand is low, so we can see that retailer will not acquire information and that manufacturer acquire information because retailer know that manufacturer will not distort the information through the wholesale price. So let me quickly wrap up the managerial insights. So in this study, we found that the birth form in the dual channel setting may prefer not acquire information, even the cost of acquiring information is zero. And we also found that when manufacturer's direct channel is efficient when cost is low, so manufacturer prefer to acquire demand information. And also we found that information acquisition can improve the supply chain efficiency, but may not benefit the supply chain in terms of the total profit, and also may not benefit customers, supplies, and the social warehouse. So when the information available, so we suggest that contract and other mechanisms should be needed to ensure proper share of the information. Let me quickly conclude my talk. So we found that neither of the firm will acquire demand information, even the cost of acquisition is zero. And the information acquisition can have a negative impact on the retailer and the supply chain and the custom and the society in terms of social welfare. And the manufacturer who apply information always prefer sharing information with the retailer and also benefit the retailer. But retailer who acquire the information, however, may not want to share the information with the manufacturer, even that can benefit the manufacturer. And the firm with more accurate demand data must develop structure for the appropriately use the information. So in our study, we also propose some of the future work. For example, consider information structure for other types of information. Here we only consider demand information, right? So we also can consider other type of, for example, customer perception on the product's fitness or the quality, something like that. And also can consider how information manager could meet demand uncertainty, also can consider other supply chain structure, consider multiple competing retailer. So that is my talk. Thank you very much.